How have you made a rude person's day worse? I was working as a manager in a big nightclub about a year ago. I don't wear a uniform, but have a radio and run the security team. The venue has a great smoking section that looks out onto the street. One night the venue was packed, so I did my usual roam making sure that there were no problems. However, it was too packed to walk through the smoking section, so I walked down the street instead, but could still very easily see into the smoking section. One guy stares me down, then calls me over, and starts swearing at me for no reason, and telling me that pieces of shit, like you could never even get into a venue like this. He obviously had no idea I was the manager. However, I didn't want to have security get into a fight inside with him. The guy kept telling me he would punch me out, etc., and was clearly trying to look macho to impress someone. So I agreed and told him to come and meet me outside, and he could even have a free swing. He puts his drink down, takes off his jacket and storms outside. Once he walked outside, I walked back inside and told security not to let him back in. The look on his face when he realized I ran the place was priceless. And then the realization that he couldn't get back into the club was amazing. It was the easiest and most fun removal I have ever done. I'm a manager at a grocery store, so I get awesomely rude customers on a daily. Every Wednesday is senior discount day. You have to be 55 to 60 to qualify for the discount. Needless to say, Wednesdays are tense. Lots of seniors, and lots of other people who don't want to deal with the seniors. I don't generally mind the old folks. Most of them are pretty cool and have some interesting stories and cute jokes. This Wednesday there was one particular customer who was being a huge pain in the ass from the moment she walked in. She was tall, blonde, high heels, very made up, and dressed to the nines. She was probably late 30s to early 40s. She came storming up to customer service. There are no parking spots. This is ridiculous. I'm going to request to corporate that you expand your parking lot, since you don't seem to have the initiative to request that yourself. Off to a great start, lady. She comes storming back up about 45 minutes later. I'm in a huge hurry, and every line has someone in it. I need to check out here. We had 3 lines open, and each one had one single customer. I say no problem, but I'll get you a day. Check out. You have too many items to get here. She has a huge hissy fit. I don't have time for this. Let's go. As I'm checking her out. It is constant bitching. You only have one brand of MAC. That is ridiculous. I only wear MAC. But I was going to settle for Evelyn. But you don't even have that. Now I have to make a whole separate trip. Please don't put my bread on top of my eggs. The eggs could roll over and crush the bread. Please bag my avocados separately. I need to use those for a face mask tonight. They need to be perfect. I have a photo session for work tomorrow. I'm in a magazine. She was unbelievable. Finally, at the end, I had enough. As she's about to pay, I say, don't forget today is senior discount day. You get 5% off. She just stared at me. What? I smiled broadly. Every Wednesday, senior citizens get 5% off their bill. I'll go ahead and take it off. You are 55 to 60, right? She is staring at me, debit card in hand, cheeks getting red. I lose my smile slowly and say, oh, you don't qualify? Sorry about that. Maybe next year. Thanks for your honesty. I haven't seen her in the store since. I used to work for the Department of Motor Vehicles, and the one I worked at had pretty limited parking. Surprise. I had left for lunch, came back and was having a hard time finding a place to park. I finally found a spot, so I drove up to it and put my signal on showing that I was waiting for it. People, in my experience, usually respect this and continue on. Not this time. Just as the car was backing out, after I had waited a few minutes, a car came from the opposite side of the lot, made eye contact with me, and then shot right into the parking space. I was so mad, because now I would be late after looking for a new spot. As I drove past the woman that had taken the spot, I just shook my head, and she responded by shrugging her shoulders, smiling, mouthing the words, "Oh well" to me, and then ran her finger from her eye down her cheek, as if to mock me crying about it. I continued into work, got in trouble for being late, but had actually forgotten about the incident until whose number gets called to my station. But Miss Spot Stealer herself, the look on her face was priceless. Keep in mind that I'm not your average DMV worker. I understand that stuff happens and waive penalties all the time and treat my customers with respect because I believe that what goes around comes around, and I know how crappy it is to wait at the DMV all day. I'm usually so nice about getting penalties taken off of people's accounts that I get in trouble for it at times. So I greet Spot Stealer as nice as I would anyone else. In fact, it may have been nicer than I normally would be. She may have thought I didn't recognize her. Her registration is far past due, with hundreds due in penalties. I'll let her tell me her whole sob story, then finally tell her that she owes in full because she was aware of her due date. She argues it a little until, out of sight from my manager, I mouth the words, "Oh well," and drag my finger from my eye to my cheek, mocking her tears. At that point she puts her head down and proceeds to take out her card and pay the full amount because yes, we do take debit cards. Close bracket. What goes around comes around. When I was working a shitty job in my younger days, a customer was upset that he had to wait in line like everyone else before being able to make his purchase. He actually said, "Do you know who I am? I own hotels." To which I replied, "Well sir, I'm sorry, but this isn't Monopoly. This is Krispy Kreme." He was not pleased. I was sitting in my car making some photos with my new smartphone while using different settings. Then there was this woman who just stopped at an one-way street with only one lane. So she stands there for like 10 seconds doing nothing. And I thought this is very unusual. So I started to make a video. Another driver comes and honks. She then proceeds to rear and hit the car of the other guy with her big BMW. 4 guys jumped out of the BMW and start yelling at the guy. You have to know, in Germany always the one who hits another car from behind will be blamed if he can't prove that it wasn't his fault. So we have a classic insurance fraud. The poor guy at the back was really worried cause he knew he couldn't prove it. I just sit there in my car and waited for the police. Then I go outside and the police started to get the stories. Of course they were 4 against 1 guys. I just stood there and listened the woman complaining about who this idiot hits her from behind and her brand new car is now damaged. After the police took the statement from both sides and even take my statement, they said there is no chance that 2 vs 4 could prove that he didn't do it. 2 of the guys at the BMW said they didn't know the girl and were pedestrians who saw it. That would increase the credibility. So they made all false statements to the police, and exactly that's the thing I wanted to happen. I then told the police, "Oh wait, there is just one thing," like Columbo style, and said that I got a video of what happened. I showed them to the police and the women and the drivers just stand there with mouth open. You could not only see how she hits his car, but also that the pedestrians were with the women in the car. The guy then hugs me and we became good friends. Turns out he lives near me and we spend the evening drinking and gaming. SRY for bad English in German. I'm in a massive line at a store. I'm next in line. But the person in front of me has a shitload of stuff. A helpful clerk sees the mess and opens another aisle saying, "I can help the next customer." Well, that's me. However, the checkout counter has 2 sides, a right and a left. It is set up for people to come to the right side, but the left can be used as well. As I'm stepping over to her counter, this asshole from the very end of my line is sprinting to her counter, pushing people, with his partner in tow. He arrives right before me. They have a mountain of items in their cart, which he starts throwing on the checkout counter. I'm standing there on the other side with my one item, burning with rage. Checkout girl waits until he stacks all of his shit on the counter, looks at me, looks at him, and says to him, "I'm sorry sir, you're on the wrong side. You'll have to go to the end of the line," which is now massive. I put on my biggest grin, made eye contact with him as long as possible, and loudly told the clerk how awesome she was. Just the other day I was at a Chinese buffet and the 3 people in the booth next to me were questioning the waitress. She appeared to be Asian Hispanic about voting for the president and who she planned to vote for. She had trouble understanding them and communicating that she could not vote They immediately began taunting her that she shouldn't be here if she couldn't vote, that she didn't even know who the president of the United States is, and then took a picture and said they would post it on Facebook. I later found out the waitress was on a school visa and couldn't vote, but was unable to convey that to them. After the waitress walked off, one of the girls at the table, the one who took the pic, looked up and asked me where I worked, because I looked familiar. When I replied the local university in the social work department, she commented that she had recently been in my office to apply to our program. To which I replied, yes, I remember you, and I'm also on the admissions committee, followed with a wink. The color drained from her face and she knew she was screwed. Calm as a bitch. TL. Doctor, I provided unsolicited marriage counseling services to a dickhead. I worked at a hotel several years ago and had to deal with insufferable pricks about a dozen times a day. Hotel stories about Billy Mays watching granny porn. A person that threw hot coffee in my face. A person that spit on me. And a crazy lady that slapped me are in my comment history. Close bracket. The best/most evil revenge I ever got was on a guy that stayed with us 4 days a week for the entire 5 years I worked at the hotel. The big utility company in our area was having financial issues, and he was the leader of the auditing team that was sent in to straighten it out. Anyway, I would interact with the guy at least a few times every day I worked, and he was always very rude and condescending. As an example, one of his co-workers would ask me for a local restaurant recommendation and he would chime in with yeah, because minimum wage workers are known for their taste in fine dining. If someone asked me something personal, he would say something like ask him what life choices he made to be here, plunging toilets and writing down my preferred wake up call time. Maybe he can share his wisdom, so we all avoid his fate. Stuff like that. He was just a jackass to everyone on the hotel staff, and was always very demanding. Since I saw him every day, I noticed that he had developed a relationship with one of the younger women on his auditing team. I saw their romance blossom from flirting to full-on groping and grinding in the hotel lobby. One day he had just finished delivering one of his delightfully shitty bon mots to me, and I was fuming. Then he screamed at one of my co-workers because she had a Filipino accent, and he said he only wanted his room cleaned by white Americans. I vowed revenge. His wife called in to speak to him later that night, like she usually did, and I said, oh, I think he's sleeping in May's room tonight. One moment, please. And then I connected his wife to her room. His wife must not have told him what I had said, because he didn't try to get me fired. They got a divorce. They didn't have kids. But according to another guy on the auditing team, his wife got the house and custody of their dog. He stopped staying with us shortly after the phone call. I was riding my bike to work one day, and when crossing a street in the legal zone with a walk sign, a woman ran me over. She drove through the crosswalk looking to turn right and ran right into me. She stopped after I got bumped hard enough by her fender to take a spill and have some bruising all down my side. She gave me an exasperated, my bad wave, and continued to talk on her cell phone, ignoring me as I picked myself and my bike up. I walked right up to her open window, grabbed her cell phone from her ear, and chucked it into a nearby parking lot as hard as I could. I swear that was the farthest I have thrown anything in my life. She gaped at me in shock as I struggled back onto my bike and slowly rode off fuming yet victorious. Then a half-mile farther on my trek I got attacked by a goose. Not my best day. TL. Doctor, woman hit me with her car. Got revenge. Got attacked by goose. Edit. Those who have pointed out that riding a bike in a crosswalk is not legal are correct. In this particular instance it was not a sidewalk, but a designated bike path. They had a normal walk signal at an intersection, but I believe it was still acceptable to ride across as it was a bike specific path. I could be wrong though. Went to go get my exhaust fixed. No big deal, pothole poked a hole in it. When I went to go pick up the car a couple hours later, I'm treated to a woman screaming at the guy behind the counter she's positively foaming because she has been waiting nearly 30 minutes for her car to be fixed. She even goes so far as to call the guy an insignificant lazy immigrant. Guy looks at her, looks at me, throws me my keys, here you go, your magnums, ready no charge, apostrophe, looks her directly in the eyes, Looks like it's going to be more expensive than we originally thought. Would you like us to call you a cab? Apostrophe. I returned shortly afterwards with pizza for the shop. TLDR. Fuck bitches. Get pizza. I watched a lazy shopper park their grocery cart right behind another person's car instead of putting it in the cart return. I got out of my car, ran up and moved the cart, and put it behind her car. I then ran off and watched her have to get back out of her car since she couldn't back out, and then finally proceed to put up her cart the right way. I felt like a champion of the people. When people are rude to me in the drive-thru, I bang their straw so it gets a crack in it. So later on, about halfway through their drink, their straw stops working. Ha. When I was 15 over 16, I worked at a local video rental place. It was privately owned and was bootleg as hell. Pretty sure the owner used it as a front for something shady, but that's neither here nor there. The boss was too cheap to pay more than one person per shift, so I had the slow wed/Thursday night shifts all to myself. We were in this wee-icked rich, yuppie town, Concord MA, and 90% of our business consisted of local soccer moms bringing their kids in for a movie night. Most of these women were terrible people, overlords to their spoiled flock who would throw credit cards around without thinking twice and would condescend everyone they deemed beneath them. We had a very basic computer system at the time, and there was a built-in function that wouldn't allow someone to rent another movie if they had over $10 of late fees on their account. The employees had the ability to override this at their discretion, or to lower the fees if they thought it appropriate. Anyway, one day this woman comes in with a bunch of kids. If I remember correctly, it was 5 to 6 roughly 12 to 13-year-old boys. The kids were running around, pulling things off the shelves, making lots of noise, punching each other, pissing off other customers, and pissing me off as well. The woman didn't do shit about it. Basically sat there gossiping on her cell phone, not caring about the scene her kids were causing. Being a very timid person by nature, I didn't say anything and just figured I'd clean up the mess when they left. So the woman finally comes up to the counter with like 8 different movies, a few video games and a bunch of candy. She's standing there on the phone still, shoves the stuff at me across the counter, and doesn't even acknowledge my presence. So I look up her account. Boom. $120 worth of late fees and 4 titles rented for 6+ months and still not returned. So I tried getting her attention, saying something like ma'am, while her back is turned. She gestures me off. So I stand there and do nothing. She finally hangs up a minute or so later, turns to me and says something snarky like, well, what's taking so long? ? Apostrophe. So I explain. Ma'am, you have a very outstanding fee on your account and I can't let you rent any more movies until this is paid and the missing movies are returned. She flips a shit, starts ranting that her daughter rents things in her name, never returns things, doesn't pay fees, and that she herself has done no wrong and the fee should be cleared and she should be able to rent etc, etc. I nod but say, this account still owes $120 and I can't allow you to rent until it's paid. Company policy, ma'am. I'm sorry but I don't make the rules. She starts going off again, saying ridiculous things like, I know the owner, he'll wipe out the debt in a heartbeat, you'd better let me rent or I'll complain to him about how terrible his employees are etc, etc. I tell her he's out of the country, which was true, and can't be reached, and she still owes $120. She bitches some more and finally pulls out the card. We had this ancient machine that, for reasons unknown to me, would only read a magnetic strip correctly if you wrapped the card in a plastic grocery bag. I have no idea why, but it was the only way it worked. So, as you can probably guess, I ran the card with no plastic wrap. Denied. Tried it again just for looks. Denied. I printed out a receipt and asked if she had cash. She didn't, and she was ripshit about the card. I showed her the receipt saying card not accepted and feigned indifference. She walked across the street to the bank, came back a few minutes later with the money and practically threw it at me. I took the payment and said, now, about those overdue movies. I don't suppose your daughter would like to return them for you so you can rent these movies? I got the worst death glare I think I've ever received, and my mother can practically shoot lasers from her eyes, and the woman abandoned her stack of movies and stomped out. Not sure if we ever saw her again, but at the time 15-year-old me was so proud of myself for staying cool under pressure and ducking with this woman. And seriously, fuck overprivileged soccer moms. TL. Doctor, worked at a video rental store. Got revenge on a rude soccer mom / rich bitch with outstanding late fees and overdue movies. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe.